Chapter 3: Storm of Shadows. Elsa was awoken with a jolt. The wind had kicked up, blowing the trees violently around her. Disoriented, she looked around, expecting to see the first light of dawn. Instead, the sky was dark and gray, thick with storm clouds. She could have sworn she had seen daylight approaching when she drifted off, and the white-furred deer, she remembered it so clearly. It couldn't have been a dream. It had felt too real, too vivid. Shivering, Elsa wriggled deeper into her makeshift shelter, pulling her coat over her head as ice-cold rain started falling. The drops pelted her relentlessly, soaking through her clothes and making her tremble even more. She tried to shake off the unease, but the feeling that something was watching her kept gnawing at the edges of her mind. Every so often, a flash of lightning would illuminate the forest, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered. In those brief moments of light, Elsa thought she saw a dark mass moving through the woods, just beyond her line of sight. It was large and seemed to slink through the trees with a predatory grace. Her heart pounded as she gripped a sharp stick she had found earlier, holding it tightly in her hand. The storm raged on, the wind howling through the trees and the rain coming down in sheets. Elsa's fear grew with each passing minute. She strained her ears, trying to hear anything over the cacophony of the storm. Was there really something out there, or was her mind playing tricks on her? A particularly loud clap of thunder made her jump, and she crouched lower, her stick poised to strike. The lightning flashed again, and this time, the dark mass was closer. Elsa's breath caught in her throat. She could just make out the shape of a creature, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. It was watching her. Panic surged through her. She had to do something. But what? Running blindly into the storm seemed even more dangerous than staying put. She tried to calm herself, thinking through her options. Maybe the creature was just curious, not necessarily hostile, or maybe it was waiting for the right moment to strike. The wind tore at her shelter, and Elsa knew she couldn't stay there much longer. She had to find better cover, somewhere safer. But where? The forest was vast and unfamiliar, and every direction looked the same in the storm. Summoning her courage, she decided to move. She clutched her stick tightly and crawled out of her shelter, the rain immediately soaking her to the bone. She stood up, blinking against the wind and rain, and looked around. The dark mass was still there, but it hadn't moved closer. It seemed to be waiting, watching. Elsa took a deep breath and started walking, her steps careful and deliberate. She kept her eyes on the creature, ready to defend herself if it came any closer. She had no idea where she was going, but staying in one place felt like a death sentence. As she moved through the forest, the wind and rain began to subside slightly, though the sky remained dark and foreboding. She pushed through the underbrush, her senses on high alert. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of leaves made her heart race. The storm had transformed the forest into a maze of shadows and sounds. Elsa stumbled over roots and rocks, her clothes clinging to her and her limbs aching from the cold. She had no idea how long she had been walking when she stumbled into a small clearing. There, in the middle of the clearing, stood the white-furred deer. Its glowing presence was a stark contrast to the dark, stormy surroundings. The deer looked at her with those same intelligent, knowing eyes. Elsa felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone. The deer took a step toward her, and Elsa followed without hesitation. It moved gracefully through the clearing, leading her to a large, hollowed-out tree. The entrance was just big enough for Elsa to crawl inside. She looked back at the deer, which nodded its head as if encouraging her. Grateful for the shelter, Elsa crawled inside the tree. The space was dry and surprisingly warm. She curled up, wrapping her coat around her and trying to calm her racing heart. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside she felt a small measure of safety. As she lay there, Elsa thought about the creature she had seen. What was it? Why had it been watching her? She didn't have any answers, but she knew she had to stay vigilant. The forest was full of mysteries and dangers, and she would need all her wits to survive. Eventually, exhaustion overcame her fear, and Elsa drifted off into a restless sleep. The last thing she saw was the glowing form of the white deer standing guard outside her shelter, a silent protector in the stormy night.